The vast colony of New Eden sparkled like a jewel against the darkness of space. Orbital platforms circled the planet, testament to humanity's expansion beyond Earth. On the main defense station, Commander James Wilson stood at the viewport, watching supply ships drift toward the colony below. 20 years of human settlement had transformed New Eden from a barren world into humanity's proudest achievement. "Commander, we're picking up unusual readings at the edge of the system," said the young officer at the sensor station. His fingers moved quickly across the display. Wilson frowned. "Define unusual, Officer Reed." "Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Multiple objects, moving fast." Wilson stepped to the main display, where red dots appeared at the system's edge. They moved with purpose, following no natural orbital path. Alert status. Now. The station's lights dimmed as emergency protocols engage. Wilson opened a channel to planetary defense. "This is Commander Wilson. We have unknown contacts approaching. Prepare defense grid." The response came back garbled, mixed with static. Wilson looked back at the display. The red dots moved faster now. "Sir, they're accelerating. Incoming vessels, hundreds of them." Wilson had never seen ships move so quickly. Open communications on all frequencies. "This is Commander James Wilson of the Earth Alliance. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves and state your purpose." Silence answered him. Then a harsh, clicking sound filled the comm channel. It wasn't language, at least nothing human. "Sir!" Energy spike. Reed shouted. A brilliant beam of light shot from the lead vessel, striking one of the smaller orbital platforms. The platform didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing but floating debris. "Get those civilians off planet," Wilson ordered. All defense platforms, open fire. Earth's defense guns roared to life, firing salvos of missiles and energy beams toward the approaching fleet. The alien vessels, for they could be nothing else, moved with impossible agility, evading most shots. Those that did hit seemed to do little damage against shimmering shields. Wilson watched in horror as one by one, the orbital platforms fell, each destroyed with terrifying efficiency. The alien vessels moved methodically, targeting defense systems first, then communication arrays. "Commander," Reed's voice cracked. "They're launching smaller craft. They're heading for the surface." On the view screens, Wilson watched as hundreds of smaller vessels descended toward New Eden. The colony's defense grid fired desperately, bringing down some, but not enough. Not nearly enough. "Message from Earth Command," called the communications officer. "They're 8 days out with reinforcements." Wilson's stomach sank. In 8 days, there would be nothing left to reinforce. The defense station shuddered as a direct hit struck its lower levels. Damage report. Lower decks breached. Life support failing in sections 3 through 8. Another hit rocked the station. "Evacuation order," Wilson commanded. "All personnel to escape vessels." As crew members rushed to the escape pods, Wilson remained at his post, directing the evacuation. The planet below had become a nightmare landscape of fire as the alien weapons struck population centers. "Sir, you need to go," Reed said, grabbing Wilson's arm. "Last pod is waiting." Wilson took one final look at the view screen. The colony he had helped build, the people he had sworn to protect, all being systematically destroyed. He followed Reed to the last escape pod as the station began to break apart around them. 6 crew members squeezed into the small reconnaissance vessel. As they launched away from the dying station, a message broadcast across all frequencies. The alien language was incomprehensible, but the translation software struggled to interpret. Submit or suffer the same fate. The small vessel accelerated away from New Eden, its occupants watching in silence as their world burned. Wilson's hands gripped the console, knuckles white. Earth had never faced a threat like this. They weren't ready. But as he watched the alien armada methodically destroy everything he had sworn to protect, Wilson made a silent vow. Somehow, someday, Humanity would strike back. 5 years passed since New Eden fell. Earth and its remaining colonies existed in a state of constant fear. The aliens, now known as the Dominion, had attacked 3 more settlements, each time leaving only enough survivors to spread tales of their unstoppable power. James Wilson sat in a dimly lit bar on Mars Colony, staring into his drink. The nightmares had come again last night. The screams of New Eden's people, the brilliant flashes as the defense platforms disintegrated. He drained his glass and signaled for another. "You should slow down," said a woman sliding onto the stool beside him. "That's your third in an hour." Wilson glanced up. "Do I know you?" "Admiral Reyes, Earth Special Projects." She showed him an identification chip. "And I know you very well, Commander Wilson." "Not Commander anymore," Wilson muttered. "Just a civilian consultant now." "That's not what your file says." Reyes leaned closer. "Your official status is on extended leave, not discharge. There's a reason for that." Wilson studied her face. "What do you want?" "I want you to come with me. There's something you need to see." Hours later, their shuttle approached what appeared to be an ordinary asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. As they neared, a hidden hangar door slid open, revealing a massive underground facility carved into the rock. "Welcome to Project Nemesis," Reyes said as they docked. Inside, hundreds of technicians and engineers worked on machinery unlike anything Wilson had seen in Earth service. Some components clearly had the angular, crystalline appearance of Dominion technology. "How did you get this?" Wilson asked, pointing to a partially disassembled alien weapon. "Salvage teams. After each attack, we send in special forces to recover anything useful. Sometimes they find intact pieces. It's cost many good people their lives to gather this technology." They walked through vast chambers where hull sections were being assembled. Wilson stopped at a viewing window overlooking an enormous construction bay. Below, a ship took shape, sleeker than standard Earth vessels, with integrated weapon systems clearly inspired by Dominion design. "Is that what I think it is?" Wilson asked. "The first ship built specifically to fight the Dominion. We're combining their technology with human innovation. They rely on mathematical precision and overwhelming force. We're creating something unpredictable, something that can outthink them." "You're building a warship," Wilson said, after the Senate voted for the appeasement policy. "Some of us believe appeasement will lead to extinction," Reyes replied. "This project operates under special authorization, outside regular military command." Later, in a conference room, Wilson reviewed the technical specifications. The ship incorporated a revolutionary drive system reverse-engineered from Dominion technology, allowing faster-than-light travel beyond anything humanity previously achieved. "Why show me this?" Wilson asked. "Because we need a captain," Reyes said. "Someone who's faced them and lived. Someone with nothing left to lose." Wilson stared at the schematics. "The Senate will never approve an offensive mission. They already have, in a way." Reyes handed him a datapad. "Last week, another outpost was hit despite our attempts at diplomatic contact. 20,000 dead." Wilson read the report, rage building inside him. The peace faction. Losing support. Even they see that submission only delays the inevitable. A technician entered with urgent news. "Admiral, our deep space monitors detected another Dominion fleet entering the Ta City system." "That's the Gibson mining colony," Wilson said. 4,000 people. Reyes nodded grimly. "And our nearest military vessels are 3 days away." Wilson looked through the viewport at the half-completed warship. "How close is it to operational status?" "The primary systems are online, but we're weeks away from completion." Wilson turned to her. Decision made. "Move up the timeline. How quickly can you assemble a crew?" "You're accepting command." Wilson nodded, the faces of New Eden's dead flashing in his memory. "For 5 years we've been running, hiding, and watching our people die. It's time the Dominion learned that humanity isn't as defenseless as they thought." Reyes smiled. Welcome back, Commander Wilson, or should I say, Captain of the HSS Nemesis. The vast hangar bay of the asteroid base echoed with activity as the crew of the newly christened HS Nemesis prepared for departure. Captain James Wilson walked along the ship's gleaming hull, running his hand over the smooth metal. The Nemesis wasn't beautiful by conventional standards. Its angular form and protruding weapon arrays gave it a predatory appearance. But to Wilson, it represented something humanity had lost since the Dominion attacks began: hope. "She's ready, Captain," said Dr. Anna Foster, stepping up beside him. The chief engineer had spent 3 years designing the hybrid propulsion system that would give Nemesis its edge. "Though I still have concerns about the integrated Dominion components, we don't fully understand how they interact with our systems." Wilson nodded. "Consider it a test run, Doctor. We learn by doing." "Or by exploding," Foster muttered, but followed Wilson toward the main airlock. Inside, the Nemesis hummed with energy. Unlike the utilitarian design of standard military vessels, its bridge featured an open command center with holographic displays that responded to gesture and voice. The crew, all volunteers, all survivors of Dominion attacks, worked at their stations with quiet determination. "Navigation is online," reported Lieutenant Tom Parker, a former colony defense officer whose family had died during the attack on Taw City. "Weapons systems at 92% capacity." Wilson took his place in the command chair. "Communications. Secure channel to Admiral Rice established," answered Communications Officer Lisa Dias. Her voice carried the slight accent of New Eden's southern continent. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Rice in the base's command center. "Captain Wilson, the Earth Senate Defense Committee has formally declined knowledge of this mission." Wilson smiled grimly. Plausible deniability. How convenient for them. "Politics." Rice shrugged. "Officially, you're conducting an extended field test of experimental propulsion systems. Unofficially, make them regret New Eden." "Understood, Admiral." "Any intelligence on Dominion movements?" "Our deep space arrays detected activity in the Procyon sector. A small Dominion outpost with minimal defenses. Good target for your first run." Wilson nodded. "Perfect for testing their response patterns." "Captain," Rice hesitated, "the Nemesis is our only ship with this technology. If you're cornered, the self-destruct is built into my command codes. They won't take this ship." As final preparations continued, Wilson called the senior officers to the briefing room. The small group included Foster, Parker, Dias, and Tactical Officer Marcus Reed, one of the few who had escaped the defense station with Wilson 5 years ago. "Our mission is simple," Wilson told them, activating a holographic display of the Procyon system. "We hit the Dominion outpost, assess their defensive capabilities, and withdraw before reinforcements arrive." "Will we take prisoners?" Reed asked. Wilson considered the question. "If possible. We need intelligence more than revenge." "Some of us might need both," Parker said quietly. Wilson looked around the table at their faces, all carrying invisible scars from what they had lost. "This isn't just about payback. If we're going to survive as a species, we need to understand our enemy, their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses." Foster leaned forward. "The reverse-engineered drive will give us approximately 18 minutes before the system needs to cool down. That's our window for the entire operation." 18 minutes to make history," Wilson said, "to show the Dominion that humans aren't just prey." Hours later, the massive hangar doors opened to the void of space. The Nemesis hovered momentarily, its engines glowing with an eerie blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Wilson gave the order. "Take us out, Lieutenant Parker. Prepare for hyperspace jump." The ship accelerated smoothly, leaving the asteroid base behind. As they cleared the solar system, Wilson felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, not just for his crew, but for humanity itself. "Jump drive charged, Captain," Foster reported from engineering. "Ready on your command." Wilson took a deep breath. "Execute jump." Space folded around the Nemesis as the experimental drive engaged. In a flash of light, humanity's vengeance was on its way to deliver an unexpected message to the Dominion. The hunted had become the hunter. The Nemesis burst from hyperspace at the edge of the Procyon system, its sensors immediately scanning for Dominion activity. The bridge crew worked in tense silence as data streamed across their displays. 3 Dominion vessels in orbit around the 4th planet, Lieutenant Parker reported. Standard patrol configuration. They haven't detected us yet. Wilson studied the tactical display. The Dominion outpost sprawled across the small rocky planet's surface, a collection of angular structures surrounding a central command hub. The patrol ships maintained a precise triangular formation, just as Dominion tactics dictated. They're creatures of habit, Wilson observed. Predictable. That's their weakness. He turned to Reed at the tactical station. Targeting solutions for the patrol vessels. Prioritize their command ship. Weapons hot, Captain, Reed confirmed. Firing solutions locked. Wilson stood, his voice steady. All hands to battle stations. Engage stealth systems and bring us in. Let's introduce ourselves. The Nemesis glided forward, its experimental absorption hull swallowing sensor pings from the unsuspecting Dominion vessels. At 5,000 kilometers, well within striking range but still undetected, Wilson gave the order. Fire. The Nemesis unleashed a barrage of hybrid weapons, Earth missiles carrying warheads enhanced with repurposed Dominion technology. They crossed the void in seconds, striking the lead Dominion vessel before its shields could activate. The alien ship shuddered, then broke apart in a silent explosion. Direct hit. Reed called out. Target 1 destroyed. The remaining Dominion ships reacted immediately, breaking formation and charging weapons. But their movements followed standard response protocols, exactly what Wilson had anticipated. They're splitting up to flank us, Parker said. Classic pincer maneuver. Wilson nodded. Exactly as expected. Execute countermeasure Alpha. The Nemesis suddenly accelerated toward the planet, seeming to flee. The Dominion vessels pursued, exactly as Wilson had predicted. As they closed the gap, the Nemesis abruptly cut engines and rotated 180 degrees, bringing all weapons to bear on the approaching ships. Fire everything, Wilson ordered. The human warship erupted with destructive energy. 1 Dominion vessel took the full brunt of the attack, its shields overloading in cascading failure. The other managed to evade the worst of the barrage, but still suffered significant damage. Remaining target is venting atmosphere, Reed reported. Their weapons are offline. The outpost is scrambling fighters. Dias called from communications. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Sounds like they're calling for reinforcements. Wilson turned to Foster. How long until jump drive is ready? 12 minutes until cool-down completes, she replied, fingers dancing across her console. I might be able to shave off a minute or 2. Do it, Wilson ordered, then addressed Reed. Target the outpost's communications array. Knock it out. The Nemesis swung toward the planet, easily evading the first wave of Dominion fighters. Its main guns fired a concentrated beam that sliced through the outpost's tall transmission spire. The structure collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris. Their long-range communications are down, Reed confirmed. But those fighters are still coming. Wilson smiled grimly. Let them come. Launch countermeasures and prepare for close engagement. The Nemesis released a cloud of small drones that darted among the approaching fighters, confusing their targeting systems. The human vessel moved in patterns no Dominion tactical computer could predict. Sharp turns, random accelerations, and sudden stops that defied conventional space combat doctrine. One by one, the Dominion fighters exploded or spun away, disabled. The surviving Dominion cruiser attempted to retreat, limping away from the planet. Should we pursue? Parker asked. Wilson shook his head. Let it go. I want survivors to tell the story. He turned to Dias. Broadcast on all frequencies. translated into their language. Remember New Eden. As the message transmitted, Wilson ordered a final pass over the Dominion outpost. The Nemesis's weapons targeted key infrastructure, power generators, defense systems, and supply depots, but deliberately avoided residential areas. Jump drive ready in 60 seconds, Foster announced. The Nemesis pulled away from the devastated outpost, leaving the Dominion with a clear message. Humanity had finally struck back. As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, news of the attack spread throughout human colonies. For the first time in 5 years, people looked to the stars not with fear, but with newfound hope. The Dominion High Command chamber pulsed with crimson light, the color of highest alert. Supreme Commander Rakdos stood before the assembled War Council, his tall frame rigid with controlled fury. The holographic display showed the smoking ruins of their Procyon outpost, evidence of a humiliating defeat. The human ship appeared without warning. Rakdos explained. It employed technologies we believe beyond their capability, including weapons derived from our own designs. One of the council members leaned forward. Impossible. Their species lacks the intellectual capacity to understand our systems. The evidence suggests otherwise, Rakdos replied coldly. This vessel, this Nemesis, destroyed 2 of our patrol ships and disabled a 3rd. More concerning, they specifically targeted communications and avoided unnecessary casualties. These are not the actions of frightened prey, but of a tactically sound predator. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled over them. For 5 cycles, the Dominion had operated with impunity in human space, meeting minimal resistance. This sudden change threatened not just their military operations, but the Dominion's core belief in their inherent superiority. Deploy the Hunter Squadrons, ordered the High Counselor. Find this vessel and destroy it. Make an example of them. Across Dominion space, specialized warships disengaged from their regular duties. The Hunter Squadrons, elite units trained to track and eliminate threats, converged toward the border of human territory. Meanwhile, aboard the Nemesis, Captain Wilson reviewed the data from their successful strike. The ship had returned to the asteroid base for repairs and analysis of the captured Dominion technology. Their response time was slower than expected, Wilson noted as his senior officers gathered in the briefing room. We had almost 3 minutes before the fighters launched. Overconfidence, Reed suggested. They weren't expecting resistance, let alone a direct attack. Dr. Foster projected the analysis of the Dominion ship's debris they had collected before jumping to hyperspace. Their hull material contains crystalline structures I haven't seen before. But more interesting is this. She highlighted a small component. It's a communication module, still partially intact. Wilson leaned closer. Can we use it? Possibly, Foster said. With some modifications, we might be able to tap into their network. Not to communicate as them, but to listen in. Make it happen, Wilson ordered. Any intelligence on their movements gives us an edge. Over the next month, the Nemesis conducted hit-and-run strikes against Dominion targets, a supply convoy near Ta City, a listening post at the edge of the Epsilon Indi system, a small research facility orbiting a gas giant. Each strike carefully planned, executed with precision, and concluded before Dominion reinforcements could respond. With each success, the crew's confidence grew, but so did the Dominion's determination to find them. Twice they narrowly escaped Hunter Squadrons that arrived sooner than expected. The enemy was adapting, learning their patterns. In the engineering bay, Foster worked tirelessly on the salvaged communication module. She had connected it to an isolated system, preventing any possibility of the Dominion tracking them through it. After weeks of careful work, she called Wilson to her lab. I've done it, she said, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. We can access parts of their communication network. It's like eavesdropping on their subspace transmissions. Wilson watched as alien characters scrolled across the screen. Can you translate it? Some of it. Their language is complex, but our AI is learning. Look at this. She highlighted a repeating pattern. These are coordinates transmitted multiple times with high-priority markers. Wilson studied the data. Could be a rendezvous point for their hunter squadrons. Or a trap, Reed suggested from the doorway, having joined them silently. Foster continued decoding. There's more. References to a central command structure, something called the Dominion Core. It seems to be both a place and an entity. Wilson's expression hardened. Their homeworld. I think so. And look at this frequency of transmissions. They're all directed toward this single point. Everything flows from there. Orders, resources, fleet movements. Wilson straightened, a plan forming in his mind. If we could reach this core, it would be suicide, Reed said. The most heavily defended location in Dominion space. Or our best chance to end this war, Wilson countered. Not through attrition, but by striking at their command structure directly. He stared at the alien coordinates glowing on the screen. The Nemesis had been built to bring the fight to the enemy. Perhaps it was time to take that mission to its logical conclusion, into the very heart of Dominion territory. The Nemesis hung in the darkness of deep space, all systems powered down except for life support. Inside, the crew worked in near silence as Captain Wilson outlined his audacious plan. The Dominion Core lies here, Wilson said, pointing to a holographic display showing a star system deep in enemy territory. According to the data we intercepted, it's their central command and possibly their homeworld. Getting there means passing through at least 3 heavily defended sectors, Reed pointed out. Even with our stealth technology, we'd be detected. Wilson nodded. That's why we won't try to hide. We'll use their own hyperspace lanes and identification codes from the communication module we captured. Foster frowned. The codes might work for initial identification, but any detailed scan will reveal we're not a Dominion vessel. We only need them long enough to reach this point. Wilson indicated a region near the core system. Once there, we make a direct jump to the core itself. No Dominion ship would do that, Parker said. The energy signature would be massive. Exactly, Wilson replied. They'll assume it's one of their own vessels with an emergency. By the time they realize otherwise, we'll be in position. 3 days later, the plan was in motion. The Nemesis slipped through the first Dominion checkpoint using the stolen codes. When questioned, Dias transmitted garbled responses that mimicked damage to communication systems. The ruse worked. They were waved through with minimal scrutiny. The second checkpoint proved more challenging. A Dominion patrol vessel approached, clearly intending to dock and inspect them. Evasive maneuvers, Wilson ordered calmly. Prepare for emergency jump. The Nemesis suddenly accelerated, leaving the surprise patrol ship behind. Before the Dominion could raise alarms, the human vessel jumped to hyperspace. That's Tornet, Reed muttered. They'll be waiting for us now. Good, Wilson said. Let them concentrate their forces where they expect us. We're changing course. Instead of heading directly to the core, Wilson ordered a jump to a nearby uninhabited system. There, they powered down again, letting the Dominion search parties pass them by. 18 hours later, they'd made their final approach. The Nemesis emerged from hyperspace remarkably close to the Dominion core, a massive planet surrounded by orbital structures and defense platforms. But something was strange about the scene. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns, Foster reported. The orbital structures, they're not just military installations. They're control centers. Enhanced scans revealed the truth. The planet below wasn't just a military headquarters. It was populated by billions of Dominion citizens. But most shocking was the class distinction evident even from space. The orbital structures housed a small percentage of the population, the ruling caste, while the planet's surface showed signs of industrial exploitation and resource extraction. They're controlling their own people, Wilson realized. The ruling caste lives in orbit, while the majority of their species works on the surface. Further scans confirmed his theory. Communication was strictly controlled between the surface and orbital habitats. Defense systems pointed not just outward to defend against external threats, but inward toward the planet itself. "This changes everything," Wilson said quietly. "We thought we were fighting a unified enemy. We're actually fighting a ruling minority that's oppressing its own kind." Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple vessels approaching," Parker shouted. "They've spotted us." The Nemesis rocked as the first salvos struck their shields. Wilson ordered evasive action, but they were surrounded. 3 Dominion battlecruisers closed in, their superior firepower hammering the human vessel. "Shields at 40% and falling," Reed reported. "We can't take much more of this." Wilson made a split-second decision. "Foster, can you access their planetary communication network? The one that reaches the surface population?" "Possibly," she replied, fingers flying across her console. "But what good will that do?" "The truth is our most powerful weapon now," Wilson said. "Broadcast everything we've learned about their society. Show the oppressed majority how their rulers have been using them, and how they've been waging war against humanity." As the Nemesis took more hits, Foster worked frantically to break into the Dominion's communication network. The ship shuddered, systems failing, but Wilson stood firm on the bridge. They might not survive this mission, but if they could plant the seeds of rebellion within the Dominion itself, humanity might still have a chance. The Nemesis drifted in space, smoke billowing from multiple hull breaches. Emergency systems struggled to maintain life support as the crew worked frantically to restore power. Through the viewport, Captain Wilson watched the unfolding chaos around the Dominion core world. "Status report," he demanded, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. "Engines offline. Weapons at 12%. Shields completely depleted," Reed replied, his voice steady despite their dire situation. But Foster did it. The transmission went out across their entire network. On the main screen, they watched as unprecedented events unfolded. The surface of the Dominion homeworld erupted with activity. Transport vessels rose from the planet in defiance of orbital defense systems. Some were shot down, but many more broke through, heading toward the orbital command structures. "They're rebelling," Diaz whispered, translating incoming communications. "The working caste is rising up against the controllers." 2 Dominion battlecruisers continued their assault on the crippled Nemesis, but the third abruptly ceased fire. Wilson watched in astonishment as it turned its weapons on one of its companions. "Captain, we're being hailed," Diaz reported, from the Dominion vessel that stopped firing. Wilson nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered to show a Dominion commander. Unlike the ruling caste they had encountered before, this one lacked the ornate markings of authority. "Human vessel," the commander spoke through the translation system. "I am Sub-Commander Krell of the Labor Caste. Your transmission has confirmed what many of us have long suspected. The ruling caste has lied to us about your species and many others." Wilson straightened in his chair. "We came seeking to end a war, not start a civil one." "The civil conflict was inevitable," Krell replied. "Your arrival merely provided the catalyst. We request temporary alliance to overthrow those who have enslaved my people and waged unnecessary wars on yours." Wilson exchanged glances with his officers before responding. "We accept your alliance, Commander Krell." With the protection of Krell's battlecruiser, the Nemesis crew worked alongside Dominion engineers to restore minimal functions to the human vessel. Meanwhile, the rebellion spread throughout the Dominion core system. Orbital platforms fell one by one as the vastly numerous labor caste overthrew their rulers. Within hours, Wilson and Krell led a joint assault team into the central command structure. They fought their way through dwindling resistance until they reached the High Council chamber. The remaining Dominion rulers sat surrounded by their own guards who had turned against them. The High Counselor, distinguished by elaborate markings covering his tall frame, stood defiant. "You have doomed us all," he hissed at Wilson. "Without unified control, our species will fall into chaos." "Your control was built on lies and oppression," Wilson replied, "both to your own people and to other species. We needed resources, expansion. Your colonies stood in our path." Krell stepped forward. And you told us humans were mindless creatures who would destroy us if given the chance. Yet here they stand, offering alliance instead of extermination after all you've done. The revolution spread rapidly across Dominion space as the truth reached distant worlds. The rigid hierarchy that had defined our civilization for centuries crumbled in days. In its place, an uncertain but hopeful future began to form. 3 weeks later, a battered but repaired nemesis prepared to return to Earth. A delegation of former labor caste, now leading an interim Dominion government, stood in the docking bay to bid them farewell. "We have much to atone for," Krell told Wilson as they shook hands in the human fashion. "And much to rebuild." "As do we," Wilson replied. "But perhaps together, we can build something better than either of us had before." The nemesis departed with promises of continued communication and cooperation. As they made the jump back to human space, Wilson stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past. "Send a message to Earth Command," he told Dias. "Tell them the war is over." Parker looked up from his station. "Do you think they'll believe us? That the Dominion has changed?" Wilson smiled faintly. "They'll have to see it to believe it. Just like the Dominion never thought humanity would strike back. Sometimes the greatest change comes from the most unexpected places." The nemesis emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. As they approached their home, they brought not just victory, but a fundamental shift in humanity's place among the stars. No longer were they simply prey species fighting for survival. They had become architects of a new interstellar understanding, one built not on dominance, but on the universal desire for freedom. "Take us home, Lieutenant Parker," Wilson said. "We have quite a story to tell."